I don't know why I did it. I honestly don't know why I did it. For some reason or another, I watched Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, Arrow of the Orion, and I don't know why I ended up watching this. I don't like the first season. I don't even like the spin-off with Ainz, but for some reason, I watched this movie. And I don't know why. So, okay. The movie starts with a bunch of no-name characters getting killed, a bunch of ugly, dark-looking ruins that nobody cares about, and the goddess Artemis being there. So, let's back up. The movie introduces the world in case you haven't known what it is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon is about. It's about a world in which gods and goddesses came down from the heavens in order to become part of our world, and we become a part of their families and go into this giant dungeon where you fight a bunch of monsters, you level up, so it's kind of like an RPG, and you go into the dungeon so that way you can get some money, get some better gear. You're a native isekai. It's very much a generic isekai. It's a light novel. I don't expect much. The main character is basically white-haired Kirito. His name is Bell. So Bell is generic light novel guy where he's a good guy and he wants to help everybody, but everybody ends up falling in love with him. Basically, you're meant to project yourself onto him if you can do that. So next, we have the other big main character who probably you've seen before. Her name is Hestia. She's a goddess. She is portrayed in this anime as a big-titted loli who I'm sure you've seen. I'm guarantee you've seen. You've seen the boob ribbon. Look up the boob ribbon. It is one of the funniest looking things. She is very much one-dimensional in this movie. In the first season, she was alright, but in this movie, she just basically is in love with Belle and hates anybody that gets near him. She only wants to be with him. She does everything for Belle. Everything she says, everything she does is pretty much for Belle. And then we also have Belle's two generic friends. We have Big Sword Guy and Cat Loli. And before you ask, yes, I know they have names, but don't act like you care. They don't ever get any development, anything really crazy. It's just Big Sword Guy and Cat Loli. So from the beginning, the movie has a crew in a dungeon talking about this festival that's going on up above. They go to the festival, and there's the god Hermes, who is looking for someone to pull out this arrow, spear, sword looking thing, and depending on how you look at it, it's trapped in the stone. From the subtitles I saw, people were calling it a sword when it was very obviously an arrow, and it was also long enough to be a spear, so I don't know what it's supposed to be. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be an arrow, but it looked pretty funky looking. Anyways, so they're trying to see who can pull out this arrow, and lo and behold, who do you think it is? None other than white-haired Kirito himself. Bell walks up and is like, oh, I guess I'll try. And surprise, surprise, he gets it out. So then we see Artemis, and she goes to congratulate Bell, and in, a generic fashion, Hestia is upset because some other person is hugging Bell. She's actually friends with Artemis, and Artemis skips out on her hug and goes and hugs Belle. And then she's like, what are you doing? And of course, after a little bit of bickering between Hestia and the cat Loli and Artemis, Belle decides and the crew that they're going to go help Artemis fight this giant CG monster. I mean, some greater evil. Honestly, it's just a monster. Who really cares? But there's a bit of a twist, but we'll get back to that later. So on their journey there, we see the crew. They run into a bunch of CG scorpions, attacking a nameless mother and child. It is shown that Artemis is struggling a bit, which is a little bit confusing, and Bell has to unleash the power of the arrow with this big flashy attack. He kills all the monsters. He explains that he needs to save girls because that's what good guys do. In the first season, it's explained that his grandfather gave him this advice, and he really takes it to heart. It's kind of like an Uncle Ben situation. Afterwards, the crew makes it to these ruins, and they meet up with the family of Hermes, who has been waiting for them. There's a little spaff between Hermes and his family, just a fun little comedy thing. This tries to be a little comedic, but I mean, it was very hit or miss, depending on what you find funny. There's also this elf waitress who Belle knows. She's a skilled hunter who uses wind magic, and that's about it. Not really much about her. Next, we have the crew arriving at the camp, and what better way to relax than to take a peek at the girls taking a bath, right? Hermes gives these boys a motivational speech about how we can't give up hope, we have to go peek on these girls because anime. And it's repeated over and over that Artemis is a pure goddess. She's the virgin goddess, and that no one has ever seen her undressed. But how does that stop anybody except for Belle, right? Belle is the only one who gets to go see her undressed. And then they have this really weird ballroom dance scene underneath the moonlight, and it's like, it felt really out of place for me, at least. I don't know, maybe you liked it. While this is going on, Hestia takes the arrow and plans to throw it in the water, but Hermes stops her, and it's shown at this point that they're doing more than just killing some giant monsters. There's a bit more to this arrow and a bit more to this quest. The crew then sets out for the ruins, and they fight the CG monster. They get to the big reveal, and the reveal is that the monster has the true Artemis trapped inside this blue-looking core crystal thing, and Artemis has been traveling with the crew. Turns out to be like the other half / a ghost of her. It's anime, so don't think too much about it. Meanwhile, back in the main city, we have our vast list of side characters that begin to notice that the monsters in the dungeon are acting a little weird. And so it's up to the houses of Loki and Freya to keep the people safe in the city. If you watch the first season or the spin-off, you know Ainz Wallenstein, and you know, you will have no idea who any of these side characters are if you didn't watch the first season. I'm gonna be honest with you, you don't really have to know. The characters are just side characters. They have a little quirk about them and maybe a little bit of a design put into it, but not too much effort into the design. That's what helps them stick out from the townspeople, but they're not enough to look like main characters. Anyways, getting back to Belle and the crew, they fight the monster and it proves to be too much for them until Belle gets this Light of Artemis power up, and then he goes all hollow Ichigo mode and he destroys a core crystal. He ends up stabbing Artemis. Everything goes back to normal. We have a few somber shots and musics of characters remembering Artemis. They leave the ruins and go on to season 2. And with that, I can't really say I'd tell you to watch this movie. It's really a waste of time. If you like the first season, or if you like generic light novels with Kirito-like protagonists, I guess this is your movie. If you don't, this very well isn't your movie. But if you have literally nothing else to watch and maybe just want to put on something to have a laugh or have a beer do, knock yourself out. As for me, I think I might watch season 2 only to see how bad it gets. I like watching bad things to appreciate better things. But that's all I gotta say for Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, Arrow of the Orion. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Check the links in the description and subscribe for future rambles.